Greetings. We're here with Professor Noam Chomsky at MIT, who's the world's most cited living author. And the reason I bring that up all the time is because I want to bring attention to how often he's not seen on TV. If he's the most cited living author, what don't they want you to hear that he has to say? Well, anyway, the reason that I'm here today, Noam, is that I've run for Congress a couple times, as you know. And what I've seen, and what's a disturbing factor I've seen, is the rise of the Libertarian Party in the United States. And I want to ask you to give us a little background on the history of how libertarianism in the U.S. has strayed from its origins in Europe.
Well, the libertarian conceptions basically come out of classical liberalism, 17th, 18th century classical liberalism. It's the core principles of classical liberalism were opposition to illegitimate authority. People should be free from constraints and controls by authoritarian structures which have no inherent legitimacy. Basically one or another form of tyranny or domination. So in the early days they were concerned with feudalism, with tyrannical states and so on. By the late 19th century on through the 20th century, some of the major authoritarian illegitimate structures are the corporate system, the private tyrannies.
Right.
Corporation is basically a tyranny.
Right.
Dominated from the top, take orders from above, give them down below. At the bottom, you can rent yourself. You have no part. It doesn't even pretend to have anything like popular democratic control. With the so-called libertarian movement in the United States, which incidentally, friends, I often agree with them on many things. Yeah. But their policies, whatever their goals may be, their policies tend to drive people under the control of the worst possible form of tyranny, unaccountable private tyranny. Right. And that's the opposite of libertarianism.
Well, I know there was in the debates and so forth. Well, actually, going back to the 2004 vice presidential debate, it was interesting because they had a Green there and also had a Libertarian. And the Libertarian, whenever it came to social issues, he was like, well, we leave that up to the community. I mean, they had it right with the drug war. They had it right with, not being, the U.S. getting involved in all these interventions, to get out of those. But when it comes to social policy, it's like, well, we leave that up to the community. Communities aren't doing a very good job. We can leave that up to the community now.
Who's the community? The community is not a collection of people who are equal in opportunity and power. The community, the society, consists of a highly inegalitarian structure with extreme wealth and power concentrated in a very small sector, and most people disempowered. That's the community. So if you leave things up to the community, what you're in effect saying is, let's let the top fraction of 1% in wealth and power determine everything. Right. And what are they going to determine? Well,
in their
favor.
Their
interest. So this is, again, I'm not saying whoever the speaker was believes this, but the implications, the consequences of this pretense that you're leaving things to a community of equal participants is just wildly off base. Right. You're leaving it to a community of people within a group within which a tiny percentage, actually literally a fraction of 1%, have overwhelming power and opportunity, and as you move down the scale, less and less, and most of them are simply disempowered.
Well, what I'm worried about is that we're coming up, Charlie Reese wrote an article entitled 545 People. In this, he made an argument that, with the, you've got the Senate, you've got the Congress, and you got the President and 9 Supreme Court members. So other than that, so you have 536 of those people we choose. Well, I mean, sort of, with the electoral process that we all know that.
We don't actually choose them.
Right.
For one thing, a large part of the population doesn't even bother to vote.
Oh, I know that.
And they have good reasons for it.
But, you know, that my struggle against all odds has been to try to get these elections. Actually, incidentally, last time, I was included in the debate, but the Republican didn't show. So they didn't televise it. So if it's not put over the propaganda box, it's like as if it didn't even happen. But what I fear is that with the rise of the third party, it seems like the Green Party in the U.S., the Libertarian Party is rising, that the Green Party is lessening, and I just want to see more.
Well, there's a reason for that. The Libertarian Party, whatever the goals and intentions of the individuals, is a party whose programs favor concentrated wealth and power.
But they're fooling a lot of regular folks.
Relatively acceptable.
Right. They're fooling a lot of regular folks, though. That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying perfectly nice people. You know, these may be people who say, look, I really believe in freedom, liberty, equality, and so on.
Yeah.
But take a look at their policies. Their policies say, for example, remove regulation on financial institutions.
Right.
What does that do? It frees them to concentrate power to punish the rest of us. And of course, in the background is something that's not said. Take, say, financial institutions. The government actually, in many ways, designs policies which ensure that the taxpayer subsidizes those institutions.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And that's not discussed.
No, that's not discussed. Well,
Incidentally, that's not a joke. There was recently an IMF study, International Monetary Fund study, of the profits of the major, I think a half dozen major U.S. banks.
Oh, it's
and it traced them almost entirely to a tacit government insurance policy. That is a tacit commitment that they won't be allowed to crash. Now that's not just the bailouts, that's a small part of it.
Right.
They get access to cheap credit, they get inflated credit ratings, they have the opportunity of making very risky and hence profitable investments, because if they collapse, the taxpayer will step in and bail them out. All of that contributes enormously to their profits. The business press, Bloomberg, estimated the implicit taxpayer subsidy at about over $80 billion a year.
Right. Now, what do you say to the person who says, well, libertarian socialism, that's an oxymoron?
That's
an oxymoron.
In the United States.
It's an
because
oxymoron.
In the United States, libertarian means a support for capitalist autocracy. And yes, it would be an oxymoron to talk about a socialist support for capitalist autocracy. But that's a U.S. term.
But here, it's funny that people fear.
Libertarianism in the world meant the legacy of classical liberalism, which is quite different.
Workers' struggles.
Like, let's say, John Stuart Mill, outstanding figure of classical liberalism, was in favor of worker ownership of enterprises.
Wow. Okay. Because when you talk about some of these things, I'm making it so the average Joe or Jane can understand.
In the United States.
Yeah, in the United States.
The US is off the spectrum. This is a business-run society to an unusual extent.
Oh, they got funding, supposedly, well, not the race, the guy I was running against, but somebody else. I heard that he got funding from the Koch brothers. And
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, the Koch brothers call themselves libertarians.
Yeah.
And, meanwhile, they're lavished with huge government subsidies, protected in all sorts. I mean, even the Pentagon is, to a substantial extent, a subsidy for the energy corporations.
Right.
They're
of course.
Pipelines, sea lanes, the energy system working for them, and so on.
Well, I'm hoping
that's
that
a small part of it.
I'm hoping that the Green Party can be seen as something apart from tree hugging. Not that that's bad, tree huggers or whatever.
That phrase is interesting. See, in a highly indoctrinated society like
Right.
ours, if you're trying to protect the commons from attack by private power, you're denounced as tree hugging.
Right.
That's, if you can't answer the arguments, you use invective.
I know, and they use it, and it's powerful. I mean, they can change, like green can become a bad word. I remember like the AIDS appetite suppressant candy, and then all of a sudden you don't see commercials for that after AIDS
Well,
came
actually,
around.
The effect of propaganda is pretty dramatic. One interesting case is, right of great current concern, is the health system. There have been polls in the United States for decades, and which show that the population most of people are in favor of some kind of national health care.
Yeah,
So
they've had it
consequences
in
are-
other countries.
But of course, it's never even been considered.
Well, public option was, but not.
The public option was when Obama produced his Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
Initially, there was a proposal for a public option.
Right.
It was favored by a large majority of the population. It was dropped without discussion.